What if I told you that after World War II ended, some of the most wanted Nazi officers on Earth simply disappeared? Not on battlefields, not in prisons, but into new lives with fake names, hidden passports, and secret escape routes stretching across Europe and South America. While the world celebrated the fall of Nazi Germany, thousands of former SS officers, war criminals, and collaborators were already planning their escape. And the terrifying part? Many of them succeeded. When Adolf Hitler died in 1945, most people believed the nightmare was finally over. Germany surrendered. Nazi flags came down. Concentration camps were liberated. The world saw the horrifying truth of the Holocaust for the first time. Millions were dead, entire cities were destroyed, and Europe looked like a continent that had survived the apocalypse. But in the middle of all that chaos, countless Nazi officials saw an opportunity. Europe after the war was total confusion. Governments had collapsed, borders were shattered. Millions of refugees wandered across destroyed countries with no documents, no homes, and no way to identify who they really were. Cities burned, records disappeared, and entire populations were displaced overnight. For Nazi officers trying to escape justice, it was the perfect environment. Some shaved their famous SS-style haircuts. Others destroyed uniforms, burned documents, and changed their names completely. High-ranking officers suddenly blended into crowds of starving civilians fleeing across Europe. And because Allied forces were overwhelmed trying to rebuild entire countries, tracking every Nazi became nearly impossible. But escaping Europe wasn't enough for many of them. They needed somewhere to disappear permanently. That's when the Ratlines emerged, secret escape networks that helped Nazis flee Europe through hidden routes into countries like Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Syria. Some routes involved corrupt officials providing fake passports. Others relied on sympathizers who still believed in Nazi ideology even after the war ended. And yes, some former Nazis even received help from people connected to churches, intelligence agencies, and governments terrified of the growing Soviet Union. Because after World War II ended, a new conflict was already beginning, the Cold War. Suddenly, former Nazi scientists, military officers, and intelligence experts became valuable assets. The United States and the Soviet Union both rushed to capture German technology and knowledge before the other side could. Programs like Operation Paperclip brought German scientists into America, including men who had previously worked for Hitler's regime. For some Nazi officers, anti-communism became their survival ticket. As long as they could provide information, military expertise, or intelligence connections, certain governments were willing to look the other way. And while some Nazis blended quietly into new countries, others lived shockingly public lives. Adolf Eichmann, one of the main organizers of the Holocaust, escaped to Argentina under a fake identity and lived there for years before Israeli agents finally captured him in 1960. Josef Mengele, known as the Angel of Death from Auschwitz, avoided capture for decades while hiding in South America. Many never faced justice at all. That's what makes this story so disturbing. Some of the men responsible for mass murder, concentration camps, and horrific war crimes didn't die in prison. They died peacefully in ordinary homes thousands of miles away from Europe. The reason so many escaped comes down to three things: chaos, politics, and fear. Chaos gave them cover. Europe after the war was too broken to track everyone effectively. Politics protected some of them because Cold War governments often cared more about fighting communism than hunting every Nazi fugitive. And fear kept many people silent. Some countries simply didn't want to admit how many former Nazis had entered their borders or institutions after the war. But even decades later, investigators continued searching. Nazi hunters like Simon Wiesenthal dedicated their lives to tracking fugitives across the globe. Some criminals were discovered living under fake names as late as the 1980s and 1990s. Every new arrest became a reminder that the end of World War II didn't automatically bring justice. Because the uncomfortable truth is this: history's worst people don't always disappear when wars end. Sometimes they escape, sometimes they hide.